Good afternoon, everyone. Today, for the next hour, Brad Harris and I from Full Spectrum Survival are going to discuss how to thrive in the grand solar minimum, how you can prepare right now for the changes to come, the signs around you that you're seeing, how can you get ready, how can you inform those around you, how can you get community involved. This is what we're going to discuss for the next hour. I hope it's really helpful for you. And also I encourage you to jump over to Brad's channel, Full Spectrum Survival. It's a plethora of information for you, for your personal knowledge, how to get ready for this, and how to just roll with these changes, and when others around you aren't prepared, how you can become the leader in that community because you have the skills. That's why I say jump over to Full Spectrum Survival. You're going to learn a lot from that channel. There's so much valuable knowledge there that we can be using over these next few years as things around us in our lives begin to change with rising food prices and the effects that go with that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Full Spectrum Survival's weekly live report where we discuss the events that are going on in the world around us and what we can do now to prepare for those events in the future. We have a very special guest that's coming in here to join us tonight. He's going to be here in just a second. I think he just came. David, how are you?
Hey, all right. Thank you for waiting. I had a little technical issue there, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
We were just going to get started and see when you popped in, so I'm glad you were able to get on here with us. Now, this is David, very special guest. We're going to talk about a lot of things that are really important to all of us within the community. David is the operator of the Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube. He also runs the oilseedcrops.org, which is another way that he disseminates information on extreme weather events and how the weather and the cycles of weather are affecting us and affecting all of humanity today. David, how are you doing?
all right, great. Yeah, the oilseed crops, I was a coffee trader and I used to buy Arabica coffee beans down in Myanmar, which is a tropical country, but we were getting a lot of frost damage and the new seed plantings were experiencing a loss rate around 13-14% each year of new plantings. So I thought to myself, why is it getting cold? So I started the oilseed crops for people to compare information, share ideas about different ways to produce either biofuel, but the food first aspect using the byproduct as a biofuel. Right. And then other ways of different plants that could grow in different climatic conditions, and just a platform to share information. And that's what that's all about. And that's really what led me to the Adapt 2030 and talking about all the cold weather events on our planet. There's an agenda to keep pushing this warming. Why are they not talking about all the cold events? You know, in the United States right now, it's 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit below normal temperatures.
Right.
That's not being talked about so much except regionally, right where it's happening.
Well, that's something that I've followed Adapt 2030 for some time now, and your ability to coordinate with others and to disseminate information and the research that you have done has always stood above other outlets that I have seen. And we, like you said, are experiencing not a global warming. We're experiencing extreme weather events, and we have always released this information as cyclical events. And I think that that's something that you touch on a lot, where you discuss that this has happened on Earth before, and that this information, this type of a cycle has been experienced, and we're really in for something in the future. Would you agree?
I would. And you know, the whole cyclical nature of existence was understood by the ancients for so long. They never thought in linear terms. The ancient cultures of our world all believed in cyclical time, that a pattern repeats itself, whether it be 11 years like our regular solar cycle, or 22 years when the poles flip back exactly again.
Right.
Different cycles of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, when our ocean in the Pacific warms and cools, and the Atlantic Ocean, the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation, that's on a 60-year cycle. You know, the planetary orbits themselves, how we undulate above and below the ecliptic of our actual galaxy. All these are cycles that could be understood. And if you know the frequency of them, you can for sure forecast into the future because it's already happened once. So these cycles that you were talking about, Maunder minimum, this is a grand solar minimum that occurred 1640s. The Dalton minimum was in the 1820s. We go back, there's the Wolf minimum. You can go back to the antique Little Ice Age, which is around 540 AD. 79 AD is a good one because there's really no name for that grand solar minima, but we know with the planetary geometry and the large eruptions at that time, Vesuvius, etc., that there was a grand solar minimum. So we can predict these cycles, and you know what? There's another one starting right now. It's going to intensify till about 2024.
And I think the important thing about being able to see the cycles for what they are, and like you said, predict what's going to happen in the future, is that that gives us time as humans to prepare for that to the best of our ability. Now, I want to jump ahead of the cart just a little bit and look at the long game. We see a plan in place to increasingly govern the people of this world, the citizens of this world, and lead them very well misinformed and scared of the future ahead. Do you see something similar?
I do, and I see it as a control mechanism of what's going to occur during this grand solar minimum. Because if we do study history, and let's just go back to the 1800s during the Dalton minimum, go back to the Monroe minimum, food shortages were of great concern. Back then, there were not so many people in the world, and like yourself, you're very well prepared to take care of yourself. I've watched a lot of your videos as well. You're very informative, and I always try to tell people, watch this. You can really learn a lot on just survival basic things, how to build fires, and But when we go back to it, there were very few people in the world in 1640, but people still starved to death and froze, and crops failed, and just food shortages were absolutely enormous at the time, which depleted people's immune systems, that allowed the plague to come in. And there was only less than 1 billion people on the planet. So can you imagine now there's 8 billion people, and we're about to experience the same thing. So as a government, what would you do? As the global leaders of our countries, would you come out clean and tell everybody by 2024 you're going to have an entirely different existence? Or would you let people keep going in day to day so they wouldn't quit their jobs, pull the money out of the bank, start fighting for things like seeds, tools, machinery, and whatever whatever you might need to build something to harden your home against cold, wood burning stoves? Would you really tell everybody in advance, or would you just kind of let it play out and then, try to mitigate it and control it at the end?
Well, I think a great indicator of that recently is look at Fukushima and look at what the global governments did in their withholding of information as far as what was happening at the time of the disaster and at the time of the collapse of the reactors. So if you just take that small case study and apply it to what the governments of the world would do to an earth-changing event or a series of events, you'll see, just like you said, withhold information, control the downfall, control the struggle, and keep the cogs rolling, because a government's job is to govern the people. And that's something that people lose sight of, that their job is just to govern the people of the world. And now that's not saying that all governments are evil, all are bad. No, but their job is to keep the cogs of the economy and the cogs of their industry and their corporations rolling. So like you said, we will see misinformed, misaligned information and a guilt placed back on the average person, which I think is something that global warming attempted to do. Would you agree?
I would. They tried to convince us that CO2 was the culprit for all this extreme weather that they had predicted. It wasn't even extreme weather they were predicting in the beginning. I was around for the whole global warming since the inception, since day one when we heard that word. It was all about heating, hot, hot, hot.
Right.
And now I was just reading articles the other day that says global warming's causing the 70-degree Fahrenheit below normal temperatures that are coming on December 14th to the United States. Really, 50 to 70 Fahrenheit below normal temperatures. Huge snowstorms and outbreaks. But global warming's because there's some feedback loop that now global warming causes cooling and snowstorms and blizzards. And I'm thinking, how do they reverse the narrative like this? So they're so desperate to keep it going. And I just don't see why, except as a distraction mechanism to keep you uninformed. And I don't really get the end play as why they don't want everybody prepared to get through this. Like you said, human instinct, if we had enough forewarning, everybody could prepare. We could have an entire planet fully prepared. This is going to engulf the entire northern and southern hemisphere. There is nowhere to run for this. And people, if they're unprepared, they're going to start to migrate. And we already saw what's happening with the migrations of just tens of millions of people into Europe.
Right.
What will happen when 1 billion or 2 billion or 3 billion people migrate? how is that going to disrupt everything?
Well, I